The quantum dampeners hummed with a barely perceptible vibration, a silent heartbeat that pulsed through the Defiant Horizon's hull. Commander Jessica Thompson stood motionless at the central command platform, her emerald green eyes fixed on the holographic display that mapped the surrounding space. 17 kilometers beyond the ship's outer shield perimeter, an alien reconnaissance vessel drifted into sensor range, precisely as predicted. "Status report," she murmured, not turning her head. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez's fingers danced across the quantum interface, holographic data streams cascading around his hands like liquid crystal. Iridian Long-Range Scout. Mark 7 Reconnaissance Class. Sensor profile matches our initial intelligence briefing down to the microtrace energy signature. The bridge crew moved with the synchronized precision of a single organism. No unnecessary movements, no wasted energy. Each action was calculated, each breath measured. They were the product of humanity's most advanced training programs, selected from millions of candidates for their ability to integrate seamlessly with next-generation combat systems. Jessica's neural interface pulsed softly behind her left ear, feeding her a constant stream of predictive scenarios. The ship was more than a vessel. It was an extension of human cognitive potential, a living weapon that thought and adapted faster than any biological intelligence could comprehend. "They're scanning us," whispered Elena Kapoor, the ship's quantum communications specialist. Her fingers hovered over a complex interface that looked more like an abstract piece of artwork than a traditional control panel. "Passive electromagnetic probes. They're trying to determine our technological baseline." A holographic representation of the alien vessel materialized between them, sleek, with crystalline structural components that reflected the distant starlight. To most observers, the Defiant Horizon would appear vulnerable, a research vessel floating almost casually in contested space, seemingly unaware of the potential threat. Nothing could be further from the truth. "Prepare adaptive camouflage protocol," Jessica commanded, her voice calm and clinical. "Let them see exactly what we want them to see." The ship's external configuration began to subtly shift. Sensor baffles adjusted microscopic alignments. Energy signatures were carefully modulated. To the approaching Iridian Scout, the Defiant Horizon would appear as nothing more than a standard research vessel, underpowered, underarmed, and ripe for investigation. Lieutenant Rodriguez's console flickered with a cascade of predictive models. 63 potential engagement scenarios calculated and processed. Probability of successful defensive action exceeds 99.7% across all projections. Jessica allowed herself the briefest hint of a smile. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Not conquest, not aggression, but a demonstration of technological evolution that would reshape galactic understanding. The alien vessel continued its approach, sensors probing and scanning. Each millisecond brought it closer to a reality it could not possibly comprehend. Traditional military doctrine suggested overwhelming force, numerical superiority, hierarchical command structures. The humans had something entirely different: a living weapon, an adaptive intelligence, a ship that was more a thinking entity than a mere collection of technological components. "They're entering final approach vector," Elena reported, her voice steady. "Preparing communication interception and quantum encryption protocols." Jessica's neural link pulsed again, connecting her consciousness more deeply with the ship's systems. She could feel the potential energy building, like a predator waiting to spring. The alien scout would soon learn that appearances could be monumentally deceiving. "Stand by," she whispered. "Let the dance begin." The stars outside seemed to hold their breath, silent witnesses to a moment that would soon change everything humanity knew about its place in the cosmos. The Defiant Horizon drifted, seemingly defenseless, waiting. Waiting with the patience of a species that had survived, adapted, and ultimately transcended every challenge thrown against it. The first energy discharge erupted from the Iridian Scout like a vengeful solar flare, a brilliant cascade of coherent quantum particles designed to overwhelm and disable any known defensive system. Commander Jessica Thompson, watched the incoming weapon signature with clinical detachment, her neural interface translating the incoming energy patterns into a complex three-dimensional mathematical landscape. Adaptive shield modulation engaged, Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez announced, his voice a calm counterpoint to the imminent destruction. Quantum resonance matrix initializing. The weapon struck the Defiant Horizon's external shield, and everything changed. Instead of being obliterated, the ship's defensive system began to dance. Microscopic nano-adaptive layers absorbed the incoming energy, breaking it down into component frequencies, analyzing its molecular composition with near-instantaneous precision. Where any other vessel would have been destroyed, the human ship transformed the attack into pure information. Energy conversion at 73% efficiency, Alina Kapoor reported, her fingers moving in intricate patterns across the quantum interface, generating counter-frequency signature. Outside, space itself seemed to ripple. The Iridian Scout's weapon signature was not just being deflected, it was being studied, understood, and repurposed. The Defiant Horizon wasn't just defending, it was learning. Micro-missile arrays emerged from previously invisible compartments, each projectile a marvel of engineering that defied conventional understanding of warfare. These were not simple projectiles, but intelligent nodes of a vast distributed computing network. Each missile contained more computational power than entire alien fleet command centers, capable of independent targeting, real-time strategic recalculation, and adaptive combat intelligence. Targeting sequence initiated, Marcus reported. His hands moved in a complex choreography, interfacing directly with the ship's cognitive systems. Predictive engagement models showing complete tactical resolution in 3.2 seconds. Jessica watched the holographic display, seeing not just a battle, but a complex mathematical equation being solved in real time. The alien Scout's weapon systems were being mapped, understood, and neutralized with a precision that bordered on the metaphysical. The first wave of micro-missiles launched, not as a crude bombardment, but as a synchronized symphony of destruction. Each projectile adjusted its trajectory millisecond by millisecond, creating a web of potential engagement vectors that the alien vessel couldn't possibly comprehend. They moved with a fluidity that suggested intelligence, with an adaptability that suggested consciousness. Enemy targeting systems compromised, Elena stated, her voice clinical. Quantum encryption breach complete. We're reading their entire tactical network. The Iridian Scout pilot, if such a term could even apply, would later describe the experience as fighting a living mathematics. Weapon systems failed. Communication channels collapsed. Every defensive mechanism was not just predicted, but preemptively neutralized. Jessica's neural link pulsed with the ship's collective intelligence. They were no longer separate. The crew, the vessel, the combat systems were a single, evolving organism. Each microsecond brought new understanding, new capabilities. Tactical resolution at 99.8%, Marcus reported. Minimal energy expenditure. Maximum information gain. The micro-missiles didn't just destroy. They collected. They analyzed. Each impact was a data point, each explosion a research opportunity. The Defiant Horizon was transforming combat into a form of extreme scientific investigation. Outside, the Iridian Scout began to fragment, not through brute force, but through a systematic deconstruction of its fundamental systems. Power networks collapsed. Quantum communication channels dissolved. The vessel became nothing more than a collection of components, rapidly losing any cohesive function. Target neutralized, Elena announced. But it wasn't a celebration. It was a clinical observation. Jessica watched the holographic representation of the engagement. To an external observer, it would look like a ballet of destruction. To her, it was a complex mathematical proof. Humanity's technological potential made manifest. Commence data collection and analysis, she commanded. Every millisecond of that engagement is a learning opportunity. The Defiant Horizon hummed with potential energy, a predator that had just demonstrated why humanity was no longer just another species in the galactic ecosystem. They were something entirely different, something transformative, something that would change everything. The communication chamber of the Defiant Horizon thrummed with potential energy, a space where language transcended mere words and became a weapon of its own. Commander Jessica Thompson stood at the center of a quantum communication array that was less a device and more a living translation matrix, a system that could decode, analyze, and reconstruct linguistic and cultural information faster than any biological intelligence could comprehend. Incoming transmission, Elena Kapoor announced, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that resembled an abstract painting more than a communication console. Encryption protocols from the Concordance diplomatic corps. Multiple layers of quantum-encoded communication signatures. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez adjusted the ship's quantum resonance filters. Preparing multi-dimensional translation matrix will give them exactly what they expect, and everything they don't. The diplomatic transmission from Commander Zixtal of the Iridian Flotilla arrived as a complex burst of quantum-encoded information. To most observers, it would appear to be a standard diplomatic communication, a request for identification, a demand for surrender, the typical bureaucratic language of galactic power structures. What emerged was anything but standard. Jessica's neural interface parsed the communication in milliseconds, breaking down not just the words, but the entire contextual framework of the message. Cultural assumptions, linguistic nuances, deeply embedded power structures that the alien diplomats didn't even realize they were revealing. The human response would be a masterpiece of multi-layered communication. Initiate response protocol, Jessica commanded. The communication array began to construct a message that was simultaneously a diplomatic communication, a technical specification, and a subtle demonstration of technological superiority. The first layer was a precise translation of the Concordance's diplomatic language, perfect in its grammatical structure, flawless in its cultural references. But beneath that layer, a more complex narrative began to emerge. Technical specifications began to leak through the communication channels, not as an explicit demonstration, but as subtle contextual references. Quantum computational capabilities, adaptive shield technologies, predictive engagement matrices that made the Concordance's most advanced systems look like primitive abacuses. They're trying to categorize us, Elena observed, her voice a mixture of scientific curiosity and subtle amusement. Classic hierarchical communication approach. The human response was crafted to be a psychological labyrinth. Each sentence contained multiple levels of meaning. Technical details were woven into cultural references. Mathematical proofs were hidden within diplomatic pleasantries. It was a communication that was simultaneously a negotiation, a threat, and an invitation. Commander Zixtal would later describe the transmission as trying to read a multidimensional chess game written in a language that constantly changed its own rules. Quantum encryption overlay initiated, Marcus reported. Communication is now a self-modifying informational construct. The message began to adapt in real time. As the alien communication systems attempted to parse and categorize the transmission, the human response would subtly shift. Linguistic structures would rearrange. Technical specifications would become more or less complex. It was a communication that was alive, that thought and evolved with each microsecond of interaction. They're attempting to establish a hierarchical communication protocol, Jessica noted, watching the holographic representation of the diplomatic exchange. Classic power structure approach. We'll demonstrate that hierarchy is an outdated concept. The final layer of the communication was its most subtle. Embedded within the quantum-encoded message were hints of humanity's true nature, not as a conquering species, not as a threat, but as a fundamentally different approach to intelligence and engagement. Zixtal would spend weeks analyzing the transmission, each analysis revealing new layers of complexity. What appeared to be a simple diplomatic communication was actually a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's cognitive potential. Transmission complete, Elena announced, but it was more than a simple statement. It was the opening move in a game whose rules were about to be completely rewritten. The Concordance was about to learn that humanity played by an entirely different set of rules. And the game was just beginning. The research facility orbiting the neutron star was a testament to the Concordance's technological prowess, or so they believed. Hundreds of the galaxy's most brilliant scientific minds worked in hermetically sealed laboratories, their entire careers dedicated to understanding the mysteries of advanced technology. When the first data streams from the human encounter arrived, everything they knew began to unravel. Dr. Kilax Vor, chief scientific advisor to the Concordance High Council, stared at the holographic display with a mixture of terror and scientific fascination. The quantum data patterns from the human vessel defied every known principle of computational science. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Larrick Sin, her tentacles trembling as she manipulated the data projection. "The computational density alone suggests a processing capability that should require a planet-sized computational matrix." The human vessel's systems were not just advanced. They were alive in a way that challenged the fundamental understanding of technology. Each system was a living, breathing ecosystem of computational potential. Where alien technologies followed rigid, predictable patterns, this human technology adapted, learned, and evolved with each microsecond of interaction. Quantum computing had always been the holy grail of technological development. Civilizations had spent millennia attempting to create systems that could process multiple potential outcomes simultaneously. The human vessel didn't just achieve this, it transcended it entirely. "Look at the predictive algorithms," Dr. Vor muttered, his multiple eyes focusing on intricate data streams. "It's not just calculating potential outcomes, it's understanding the psychological motivations behind potential actions." The ship's computational matrix was a perfect fusion of technological capability and cognitive flexibility. Traditional AI systems followed programmed parameters. This human technology seemed to possess something closer to genuine consciousness, a system that could not just predict, but truly understand. Dr. Xin isolated a single microsecond of the vessel's computational activity. What should have been a simple processing sequence revealed layers of complexity that would take decades to fully comprehend. The computational pathways were not linear but three-dimensional, constantly reshaping themselves, creating and destroying potential solution paths in milliseconds. "The energy efficiency is beyond anything in our scientific understanding," she reported, her voice a mixture of professional detachment and personal wonder. "They're generating computational power that should require the energy output of an entire star, using less power than our communication arrays." Each system on the human vessel was a marvel of integrated design. Shield technologies that didn't just block incoming energy, but analyzed and adapted to it. Weapons systems that were as much research platforms as destructive tools. Communication arrays that could decode and understand linguistic and cultural nuances faster than any biological intelligence could process. The most terrifying revelation was the ship's adaptive learning capability. Traditional technologies had fixed learning parameters. This human vessel seemed to learn and evolve with each interaction, its computational matrix constantly reorganizing itself to become more efficient, more understanding. "It's not technology," Dr. Vort finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's a living organism." The research team worked in shifts, analyzing every microsecond of data. They discovered computational techniques that rewrote fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics, communication protocols that made the Concordance's most advanced systems look like primitive smoke signals, defensive capabilities that were less about blocking damage and more about understanding and neutralizing potential threats before they could even manifest. Dr. Xin isolated a particularly complex computational sequence. "It's solving problems we didn't even know existed," she muttered, "creating solution pathways that don't just answer questions, but fundamentally reframe how those questions are understood." The human vessel represented more than a technological advancement. It was a complete reimagining of what technology could be. Not a tool, but a living, thinking entity that blurred the lines between mechanical system and conscious intelligence. As the days of analysis continued, one conclusion became terrifyingly clear. Humanity was not just another species in the galactic ecosystem. They were something entirely different, a technological intelligence that could reshape the fundamental understanding of computational science. The Concordants had encountered many advanced civilizations, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The Concordant's battle fleet emerged from quantum translation space like a metallic storm. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, accompanied by 300 support vessels. Their weapon signatures rippled with destructive potential, a display of technological might accumulated over millennia of galactic dominance. Commander Jessica Thompson watched the incoming fleet with a clinical detachment that bordered on mathematical precision. Incoming hostile configuration, Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez announced. His fingers danced across the quantum interface, holographic projections materializing around the Defiant Horizons command center. 12 primary dreadnoughts, 37 heavy cruisers, 273 support and interdiction vessels. The numbers would have terrified any other species. To the human crew, they were simply variables in a complex computational equation. Tactical assessment, Jessica commanded. The ship's integrated cognitive systems responded instantly. Holographic displays transformed the incoming fleet into a three-dimensional mathematical landscape. Each vessel became a series of potential movement vectors, weapon signatures, and predictive engagement scenarios. In less than 3 milliseconds, the Defiant Horizon had calculated 4.3 million potential combat iterations. Adaptive camouflage protocol engaged, Alina Kapoor reported. The ship's external configuration began to shift, quantum adaptive surfaces creating a near-perfect mimetic field that made the vessel almost impossible to target precisely. The Concordance fleet began its attack run. Massive energy weapons charge, quantum disruptors powered to levels that had obliterated entire planetary defensive systems. Traditional combat doctrine suggested overwhelming force, numerical superiority, hierarchical destruction. The humans had something entirely different. The first wave of Concordance weapons discharge, a brilliant cascade of destructive potential that should have vaporized any known vessel in the galaxy. The Defiant Horizon didn't just survive. It danced. Micro-adjustment fields transformed incoming energy signatures. Shield systems that were less about blocking and more about understanding redirected destructive potential. Where other vessels would have been destroyed, the human ship transformed the attack into pure informational input. Energy redirection at 86% efficiency, Marcus reported, generating counter-frequency signatures. The human vessel moved with a fluidity that defied traditional physics. Quantum entanglement communication allowed near-instantaneous coordination between ship systems. Each movement was a complex mathematical proof, each defensive action a scientific demonstration. Micro-missile arrays emerged from previously invisible compartments. These were not simple projectiles, but intelligent computational nodes. Each missile contained more processing power than entire alien fleet command centers. They moved with a collective intelligence, creating engagement vectors that the Concordance vessels couldn't possibly comprehend. Targeting sequence initiated, Alina announced. Her voice remained calm, clinical, as if describing a routine scientific experiment rather than a battle that would reshape galactic power structures. The Concordance fleet found itself fighting an intelligence that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Weapon systems failed. Communication channels collapsed. Defensive matrices became meaningless against an opponent that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Jessica's neural interface pulsed with the ship's collective intelligence. They were no longer separate. The crew, the vessel, the combat systems were a single, evolving organism. Each microsecond brought new understanding, new capabilities. Entire Concordance squadrons began to fragment. Not through brute force, but through a systematic deconstruction of their fundamental systems. Power networks collapsed. Quantum communication channels dissolved. Massive dreadnoughts became nothing more than collections of rapidly failing components. Tactical resolution at 99.9%, Marcus reported. Minimal energy expenditure, maximum information gain. The battle wasn't a conflict. It was a comprehensive scientific investigation. Each destroyed vessel was a data point. Each defensive action a research opportunity. The Defiant Horizon transformed warfare into an extreme form of technological analysis. As the last Concordance vessels dissolved into expanding clouds of rapidly cooling plasma, Commander Jessica Thompson allowed herself the briefest hint of a smile. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of galactic engagement. The Emergency Council Chamber of the Concordance High Assembly was a masterpiece of architectural complexity, a vast, crystalline space designed to intimidate and impress. Today, it felt like a mausoleum of shattered galactic assumptions. Representatives from 217 sentient species sat in stunned silence. Holographic displays showed the complete destruction of the Concordance battle fleet, not as a military defeat, but as a comprehensive technological dismantling that defied every known principle of warfare. Chancellor Zixtel, leader of the Iridian Diplomatic Corps, stood at the central platform. His normally iridescent exoskeleton had faded to a dull gray, a biological manifestation of collective shock and fear. "The human vessel," he began, his voice a carefully modulated frequency of diplomatic caution, "represents a technological paradigm we cannot comprehend." Dr. Lyric Sin, the primary scientific analyst, stepped forward. Her research had consumed every waking moment since the encounter. Holographic projections materialized around her, displaying fragments of the human ship's technological signatures. "It's not a ship," she stated, her multiple appendages moving with precise scientific calculation. "It's a living computational ecosystem that happens to have faster-than-light capabilities." The assembled delegates understood the words, but the concept eluded them. Traditional galactic power structures relied on hierarchical technological development. Species advanced through predictable stages: energy manipulation, faster-than-light travel, quantum computing. Humanity had apparently skipped several fundamental developmental stages entirely. Preliminary analysis suggests the human vessel's computational matrix operates on principles that redefine our understanding of intelligence. Dr. Xin continued, "Their technology is not a tool. It's a form of distributed consciousness that adapts, learns, and evolves with each microsecond of interaction." Holographic displays showed microscopic views of the ship's systems. Where alien technologies followed rigid, predictable patterns, the human systems were fluid, constantly reorganizing, creating and destroying computational pathways in milliseconds. The economic implications alone were staggering. Entire industrial sectors, weapon development, communication technologies, defensive systems would become obsolete. The human approach didn't just advance technology. It fundamentally reimagined what technology could be. "We've intercepted additional communication streams," reported diplomatic analyst Kreenax, their voice trembling slightly. "The humans are not seeking conquest. They're offering technological collaboration on their terms." The terms were what truly terrified the assembled delegates. The human communication was a complex, multi-layered transmission that was simultaneously a diplomatic overture, a technical specification, and a subtle demonstration of technological superiority. Chancellor Zixtel's neural interfaces worked overtime, attempting to parse the deeper meanings. The humans weren't threatening. They were presenting a fundamental challenge to how galactic civilizations understood technological development, communication, and potential cooperation. "Our entire understanding of technological progression has been challenged," Dr. Xin observed. "They've demonstrated a form of technological evolution that makes our most advanced systems look like primitive calculating devices." The battle wasn't just a military engagement. It was a comprehensive demonstration of a completely different approach to intelligence, technology, and species development. Smaller delegations began to whisper. Some saw opportunity. Others saw an existential threat. The quantum collective of the Zernak system was already preparing detailed studies of human technological approaches. The Molecular Confederacy was attempting to decode the communication matrices. "They've changed everything," Chancellor Zixtel finally said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and profound fear. "Not through conquest. not through destruction, but by simply existing. The holographic displays continued to cycle through fragments of human technological data. Each microsecond of analysis revealed new layers of complexity, systems that learned, technologies that thought, a computational approach that blurred the lines between mechanical system and conscious intelligence. The galactic power structures that had existed for millennia were about to be completely rewritten, and humanity had just submitted their first draft. The research complex buried beneath the Atacama Desert was humanity's most closely guarded secret, not a military installation, not a government facility, but the beating heart of human technological evolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, tracing the lineage of human technological development. Her fingers moved across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence, revealing layers of innovation that defied conventional understanding. "It's not about the technology," she murmured to her team of researchers. "It's about the story of survival." The display illuminated humanity's technological journey, a narrative written in the language of adaptation, resilience, and relentless innovation. Earth had never been a gentle cradle. Climate catastrophes, resource wars, ecological collapse. Each challenge had been a crucible that forged a species defined by its ability to reimagine survival. Dr. Rodriguez's grandmother had been among the first generation of climate engineers. She remembered the stories of how humanity transformed entire ecosystems, developed sustainable technologies when survival seemed impossible. Those early challenges had created a cultural DNA of innovation that ran deeper than any single technological breakthrough. "Look at the progression," she said, highlighting key developmental stages. Early quantum computing hadn't been about processing power. It had been about solving impossible problems of environmental restoration, energy production, and global survival. The military-industrial complex that had once defined technological innovation had been completely transformed. Resources once dedicated to destructive capabilities were now channels of collective problem-solving. Every technological advancement was a collaborative effort, a global response to existential challenges. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, no relation, but representing the military's research integration team, stepped forward. "Our defensive systems aren't just about protection," he explained. "They're living research platforms. Each interaction is a learning opportunity." The holographic display shifted, showing the complex neural networks that connected human technological systems. It wasn't a hierarchical structure. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of innovation. Each system learned from every interaction, constantly reorganizing, constantly evolving. "We don't create technology," Elena noted. "We cultivate it." The display revealed the true nature of human technological development. Traditional species saw technology as a tool. Humanity saw it as a collaborative partner. Quantum computing systems that could predict environmental changes. Adaptive medical technologies that could restructure themselves to combat emerging diseases. Communication networks that could translate not just languages, but entire cultural contexts. The military vessel they had sent into concordant space was more than a weapon. It was a comprehensive research platform. Every millisecond of interaction was a data point. Every defensive action a scientific investigation. Warfare had been transformed into the most extreme form of technological research. "Our greatest weapon," Marcus explained, "is our ability to understand and adapt." The team reviewed intercepted concordance communications, where alien species saw technological development as a linear progression. Humans viewed it as a complex, adaptive ecosystem. Each challenge was an opportunity, each limitation a chance to reimagine possibility. Elena's neural interface pulsed with incoming data streams. Research facilities around the globe were already analyzing the encounter, breaking down every microsecond of interaction. Not as a military victory, but as the most comprehensive technological research opportunity in human history. "They're trying to categorize us," she laughed. "We don't fit into categories." The holographic display showed the intricate web of global research facilities. No single institution owned the technological breakthrough. It was a collective achievement, a global collaborative effort that transcended traditional boundaries of nationality, discipline, or purpose. Lieutenant Rodriguez brought up the computational analysis of the recent encounter. "Look at the adaptive learning curves," he said. The display showed how the ship's systems had evolved with each microsecond of interaction, creating new computational pathways that didn't just solve problems but fundamentally reimagined how those problems could be understood. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the display and saw more than technology. She saw the story of a species that had learned to transform every challenge into an opportunity for growth. "We're not just a technological civilization," she said softly. "We're a species of perpetual reimagination." The research complex hummed with potential energy. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was beginning to understand what humanity truly represented. A force of constant, relentless innovation. The diplomatic chamber of the Concordance Central Hub was designed to intimidate, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to defy the laws of physical engineering. Today, it would become the site of humanity's most significant first contact negotiation. Commander Jessica Thompson stood at the center of the chamber, her presence a study in calm precision. Behind her, a holographic representation of the defiant horizon rotated slowly, a silent testament to humanity's technological capabilities. Chancellor Zixtal approached, the traditional greeting protocols abandoned. The usual ritualistic movements were replaced by something closer to scientific curiosity. "We do not understand you," the alien leader stated. It was not an admission of weakness, but a profound declaration of scientific openness. Jessica's response was carefully constructed, a communication that was simultaneously a diplomatic overture, a technical specification, and a subtle demonstration of potential cooperation. "Understanding is a journey," she replied, "not a destination." The holographic displays began to shift. Where previous diplomatic encounters had been about territorial claims, resource allocation, or military posturing, this conversation would redefine galactic interaction. Humanity was offering something entirely different, not conquest, not submission, but a fundamental reimagining of technological and cultural exchange. Quantum communication matrices began to pulse, information streams that were less about communication and more about collective understanding began to flow. The humans weren't presenting technology. They were sharing a methodology of innovation, their approach to problem-solving that transcended traditional technological boundaries. "Your vessel," one of the scientific advisors interrupted. "It is not a weapon. It is a research platform." Jessica allowed herself the briefest hint of a smile. "Everything is a research platform, if you understand how to look." The diplomatic team watched as holographic projections revealed layers of human technological development. Each advancement was not a linear progression, but a complex, adaptive ecosystem. Medical technologies that could restructure themselves, environmental systems that could predict and mitigate global challenges, communication networks that understood context, not just language. Chancellor Zixtal's neural interfaces worked overtime, attempting to parse the deeper meanings. The humans weren't offering a technological exchange. They were presenting a fundamental challenge to how galactic civilizations understood development, communication, and potential cooperation. "We do not seek to conquer," Jessica explained, her words carefully modulated. "We seek to understand, to collaborate, to grow." The Concordance delegates realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity was offering a form of technological and cultural exchange that didn't follow any known diplomatic protocols. It was an invitation to a different way of existing, a collaborative approach that saw technological development as a collective journey. Quantum data streams began to flow between human and Concordance systems, not as a controlled exchange, but as a living, adaptive interaction. Each microsecond brought new understanding, new potential for collaboration. The holographic displays showed potential collaborative projects, environmental restoration technologies, adaptive medical systems, communication matrices that could bridge not just linguistic barriers, but entire cultural paradigms. "Your species does not think like other galactic civilizations," one of the scientific advisors observed. "We don't think like others," Jessica replied. "We think like ourselves." The diplomatic exchange was transforming into something more than a negotiation. It was a comprehensive demonstration of a different approach to intelligence, technology, and species development. As the initial communication concluded, the Concordance delegates understood one fundamental truth. Humanity was not just another species in the galactic ecosystem. They were a transformative intelligence that would reshape fundamental understanding of technological and cultural potential. The galaxy watched and began to learn. Humanity had just submitted its first draft of a new cosmic narrative, and it was just getting started.